Let me get my fucking thing set up here. I'm excited to hear it because I hear a lot of 12-step recovery, but not
Hmm.
a lot of anything. Women we've had some, but not a lot.
Yeah, sure. That's cool, man.
So
Any way I can help.
okay, so you ready to go?
Yeah, this thing fix my nose ring. My nose ring sometimes gets a little itchy. Sucks.
Okay, it's all
All
you.
right.
Take it away.
All right. So my name is Michael Sean. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, and growing up as a kid, I had a single family home. My parents are still together to this day. I grew up in a really strong Roman Catholic family, where I did numerous volunteer positions there throughout my childhood, such as reading on the altar at the age of 10 years old and being president of my youth group throughout high school. So my upbringing through life was a pretty good one. I didn't grow up in poverty. I was pretty blessed to move out to the suburbs of Philadelphia at the age of 10 years old, where my parents provided for me. I grew up a lot playing sports, where I played football, baseball, and basketball, and continued that throughout my high school career. And what's most important to take from the beginning stages of my life is that I lived a sober life even through high school, as many of my friends were going to parties after football games, experimenting with drugs at that time. And it's funny to think back on that because, you know, as a young kid, in your teens and living a life then of sobriety by choice, because I grew up with a mother who she would probably not want me to say this, but I knew she smoked weed in the garage, so it always turned me off from drugs and alcohol and everything else. I had a father, just like many of the fathers probably back in the '90s, would crack a beer on his way taking me to football. So alcohol kind of turned me off at that point. And it wasn't until college, when I was finally out on my own, uh, that I decided to experiment with alcohol. And my first drink was my freshman year of college at a Halloween party. I visited another college, and the first sip of alcohol I ever took was a Miller Lite out of a keg. And I can instantly say, looking back now, that from that point on, that I was hooked. I became hooked at that point, not necessarily a full blown addict or a full blown alcoholic, but I was hooked enough to know that alcohol could take away any feelings that I might be having, as far as my anxiety, my OCD, my ADHD, my depression. And it masked that pain for many, many, many years to come. As my experiences went on through college, I've always been into fitness, and fitness has always been a passion of mine. Um, So my junior year of college, I got into modeling, where I was featured on many book covers, such as Allura's Cave romance novels. I was also in Muscle Magazine. I was also a centerfold pullout in Playgirl in October of 2007. Um, and my addictions during my modeling career started to trickle down real fast. While I was modeling, I also became a male entertainer, also known as a male dancer in the city of Philadelphia at a place called The Cave, where I also worked on the weekends down at the Tropicana in Atlantic City. So at a very young age, this is all at the age of 20 years old, at a very young age, I was experiencing some pretty mature adult situations. Um, in the clubs, it's hard when you're modeling and also dancing. It's hard not to stay away from drugs or alcohol. Fortunately, um, at the time, I wasn't really hooked onto pills yet, which I will later talk about that. um, but the alcohol, and couldn't get on stage without being totally obliterated before I got up there. I mean, because who the fuck can when you're taking off your clothes in front of hundreds of girls, right? um, and the lifestyle, just at the time, it suited it suited me because I was in the spotlight. Um, you know, all those feelings that I couldn't feel before without alcohol now included women, and that attention, and the seeking of it. But eventually it kind of gets too much to you, and you start to drink more, where to the point where I was blacking out in parking lots. I was getting into fights. There was a few times down in the city of Philadelphia where I was in pizza shops, totally hammered, and was shot at and had to jump behind pizza counters, save my life, and also the guys who worked there and owned the shop. Um, and you know, when you're in situations like that, as an alcoholic, um, you really don't see what's wrong, because you don't think that anything is wrong at that moment. So I continued to live my life like that for years. I continued to strip and model up until about 2009. But in between there, in 2007, I graduated college with a bachelor's degree. And when I came out of college, my plans were to become a nurse, to go to a accelerated nursing program. But I ended up having my first child, my oldest now, my 16-year-old daughter. Um, Sorry, my son just walked in, so you might have to edit that. That's why I kind of stopped talking. Um, but I had my 16-year-old daughter in the summer of 2007. I landed a job as a pharmaceutical rep. Um, it's it's kind of one of those situations that kind of fell in my lap. I had a great opportunity at a young age to make some really 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 good money. It allowed me to do what I like to do best, and that was talking to people, to getting out there, networking with other physicians. Unfortunately, what I promoted at the time were pain medications, and also muscle relaxers. Now, at that time, you weren't able to sample the pain medications, but the muscle relaxers could be sampled. And that's where I got addicted and hooked on the pills, through taking samples out of my trunk. Most of the time before I would go into the clubs, and while I was drinking. So not in a sober sober state of mind, I guess I should say. Um, from there, I really got some good relationships with the physicians that I was calling on, specifically one in the city of Philadelphia. And that's when I became addicted to Xanax. And this is where the story kind of really goes downhill, because for the next 3 years, using Xanax and alcohol, my life was a miserable, miserable, miserable mess that I started to recognize, but at the same time didn't know how to stop. This is when my friends first started talking to me about maybe possibly getting help. Um, and this is all 13 years before I actually became sober and got into recovery. But they recognized these training habits, but nobody knew that I was on pills. And to this day, there's many out there that probably not even didn't even know I had a pill addiction. Um, Mixing Xanax, pain medication, and alcohol together is a concoction that you really don't want to fuck with. Um, the blackouts are 100 times worse than just a regular alcohol blackout. You start to speak and say things that are totally out of context. And to top it off, the next day, and for those of you who may ever think of experimenting, it's one of the worst fucking headaches that you will ever have. And it does not go away with Advil. That thing will last you all day. So from there, with all the partying with the Xanax and the alcohol, and the pain meds, um, there finally came a point where I just had to get off them. My mom started finding my pill bottles. I was waking up drunken stupors on Sunday mornings, and I would find the whole bottle just laying there in the toilet. And this happened probably for a few months. And I just said, fuck it. I mean, if I'm going to keep getting these prescriptions and abuse these drugs, and my mother knows, and every time she comes to the house, she finds them and dumps them in the toilet. Why the fuck am I going to keep doing it? So I cold turkeyed off the pills, and that was my first sign of strength that probably should have showed me that I could have done anything from there on out. Um, in 2013, this is when things really started to go downhill after the pills, and alcohol became my main source of getting high, getting drunk, and getting totally wasted. Um, as I was uncovering, and I don't even know if that's the right word to use, but as my alcoholism was getting worse, I noticed traits such as gambling, and I also picked up a gambling addiction. Um, Gambling is another addiction. Like it doesn't matter; you're never going to be up, and you're always chasing, as any addict would, for that high. So I would sit at blackjack tables. There's times where I'd be down thousands of dollars, and I just couldn't stop myself. So in August of 2013, I actually put myself on the list to ban myself um, from all the casinos in the state of Pennsylvania. Uh, 5 months later, drunk, I went back into that same casino that I banned myself from all the casinos in the state of Pennsylvania, and was picked up while playing a hand of blackjack because they had facial recognition. That was the first time that I got a criminal trespass at that casino. And not shortly after that, a week later, went back in there drunk again, thought I had a disguise on, and got my second criminal trespass, which now has led me to be banned from every casino in the state of Pennsylvania and any Harrah's affiliated casino in the United States of America. Um, that's when I realized after the second criminal trespass that I was just going to stop gambling altogether because it didn't fit my lifestyle, especially with the alcohol involved. Um, Alcohol makes you do stupid shit as it is, and your decision making isn't isn't more aware. It's not as aware as you would be, not using. And I just think that was my best bet at that point to kind of walk away and end that. But that's where my alcoholism really got kind of bad for the last 8 years. And to make a story short, just like anybody else's journey or story of being an addict, you go through some crazy ass struggles. And that's what I began to go through, and just just wasn't ready for help. From the years of 2011 to 2010 to 2012, I was pulled over 13 times in the state of Pennsylvania for suspicion of driving under the influence. And luckily, I probably shouldn't say this, most of the time I knew the officer, and they would let me slide. And I don't think that was really a lesson that was good for me, because it made me feel like it was okay to drive drunk and to do that, because I knew I had a safeguard to get out of it if anything happened. In 2012 is when I got my first DUI in the state of New Jersey. In 2014, I got my second DUI in the state of Pennsylvania. This one was pretty crazy on my end. First off, I do not condone drinking and driving. Um, I don't think it's right to put others' lives at risk or your own life at risk. And that night, I put a lot of people's lives at risk. I was leaving a bar, which I should have never been there in the first place, because we were decorating a tree that night for Christmas with my family. Met some buddies out, spent about $400 at the bar within an hour on shots and mixed drinks. On my drive home, I was driving 45 miles per hour. Turned my head, probably was drunk, just wandering off. And before I knew it, I was in the back of somebody's trunk at a red light. Fortunately, there was a cop in front of him at the same red light. And that's where I was taken to the hospital because they could not administer a field sobriety test to me where blood was drawn at a 0.306. So if anybody can put that into context, that's over 4 times the legal limit. Um, so it's I'm kind of lucky for myself, I should say, and because I really could have injured somebody like crazily that night. And, now talking about this for the first time, you kind of think back and it kind of gets a little bit, emotional because being where I am today, I wonder sometimes how I could even make a decision like that at the time when I did. And obviously, being under the influence, you don't make the best decisions. That DUI landed me jail time. Um, it also landed me a year suspension of my license, and then another year where I had to get an interlock installed in my vehicle. It's kind of embarrassing to be driven to work, to have to go places where your dad or your wife is picking you up, dropping you off like you're in high school again, going on a date. It's embarrassing. It was degrading to me, but I understood that they were part of the consequences for my actions. Um, Over the next few years, my alcoholism got to a point where I was pretty much could have drank a half a bottle of gin, three, four locos, and a 6 pack of Miller Light Pounders every day. Over those the time period from 2016 when I was incarcerated to 2022, there were times where I would black out, lay on the floor. My wife would not know if I was alive or not. Um, there was times that I would piss myself, like crazily piss myself. There was times when I would vomit on myself. There was times when I was choking on my vomit because there was so much. Um, During this time, I was not present for any of my children. As much as I was involved with their sports, I did not have a sober mind. I was just not present and I was not there. Um, 5 months leading up to my addiction in 2022, I was drunk one night at a Memorial Day party. I broke my leg. And that summer was probably the worst summer of my life for using any type of substance, drug, or anything else. Um, I was put on disability for work. I broke my right foot. I could not drive. I was stuck in the house with a cast on. And that's where my alcoholism took a turn for the worst. But at the same time, it opened my eyes that it was probably time for me to start getting sober. Um, in August of 2022 is when I first started a process to get sober. And I want to backtrack a little bit here. Over those years, me using, I went to AA, I went to NA. It just didn't work for me. I went to rehab. I checked myself out within the first 12 hours. My wife picked me up. She couldn't believe it. I was supposed to be there for a detox for at least 7 days. Therapy, I went to it twice. I just don't like to listen to other people, I guess. So that never worked for me. So in August of 2022, I reached out to a addiction clinic. I was actually referred there by a close friend of mine. Um, and I called up that asking so that I could be administered the Vivitrol shot. Um, the Vivitrol shot is a once a month shot. It's for opioid addiction, but it also works on alcohol dependence. Knowing that nothing worked on my own willpower in the past, I thought that it would be best for me in the beginning to start off with a medically assisted treatment. And that's what I did. I went with an MAT because it was the only way for me. And I'm not saying that, and I say this all the time as I speak to people each and every day in addiction recovery. But what was I going to say there? Jeez. Oh, it, which way you take to get there. All that matters is that we get there. And if I chose an MAT and someone else chooses a different route, we still have the same belief in sobriety and recovery. And I truly believe this is a team sport. It's a team thing, and we're all in this together, and we all need to help each other out. Um, I got that Vivitrol shot for 8 months. Um, I can tell you what, it saved my life. It saved my family. It saved relationships with friends. Probably saved my career. And after those 8 months, I knew it was a shot that I didn't want to stay on for a long period of time. And I decided after those 8 months that it was time for me to start getting my health back, for me to try to do this on my own. So for the last 9 months now, I've been white knuckling this kind of through. I attend maybe one AA meeting a month at my local hall, my union hall, but it's more of an open format, so it's a little more laid back. Um, One thing that I found that we spoke about earlier in this, is working out. And I think that has been another thing that has saved my life since being off the Vivitrol shot. Um, I got back in the gym at 245 pounds. And for those of you out there that do not think that it's possible, I was down to 168 pounds, 2 months ago. And I'm now training for bodybuilding competitions, something I always dreamed of when I was younger, but I couldn't do because of my use of alcohol. And I knew I wouldn't stop that to do the diet. So I set a goal for myself to compete. This past August, I tore my tricep, had reconstructive surgery. So that kind of set me back. But we are now aiming for a show to compete in October of this year, which I am super excited about. Um, and like anything in life, maybe this is an addiction for me, but I can say this is a positive addiction that I chose to do to better my life. Um, it keeps me disciplined, it keeps me committed. It I have to stick to a strict diet every day, a strict workout plan every day. Um, and I think that's something that's important during recovery, is have a type of schedule or an itinerary to your day to smooth it out. Because just because you're sober and you're not using anymore, the anxiety's still there, the stress is still there, that depression's still going to be there. But if you make your life simpler, um, then your days are going to go simpler. As or I should say, if you're going to make your days simpler, your life's going to go simpler as well, and it's only going to help you through that recovery. Um, One thing I always believed in growing up was always giving back. So I decided in January of this past year that I was going to start sharing my story on Facebook. During this time, I also realized that it would probably be best for me to launch a website and start a company at that time. Um, and the reason I did this was just to provide hope, because for those 18 years that I was an addict, I never knew how to get sober. I couldn't figure it out. The AA, like I said, the NA didn't work, but I always saw people on Facebook saying how much time they had sober, but I never knew how. So I figured the best way to provide hope to everyone out there, and like I said, this is all community, but by sharing my experiences and anything that I went through or I'm going through now, to make you feel like you are not alone out there, that we are all in this together, and that we're all going to accomplish sobriety together, because recovery is possible and we do recover. If you'd like to learn more or follow, you can follow me on Facebook at Michael Sean Levering. Again, follow me on Facebook at Michael Sean Levering. And I'm always open to anybody hitting my inbox up. I may not get back to you right away, but I do respond to everybody. So if you have any questions, or need anything, please reach out to me. As well, my wife and I will be launching a website this coming Friday, May 10th, at rocksolidrecovery.net. And at rocksolidrecovery.net, we will be offering personalized fitness programs personalized nutrition programs. As well, I am a certified life coach, so I will be doing virtual life coaching with a specialization in addiction recovery and mental health. I would love to see you all there. Go check out the website, and also go to the Facebook today. Follow me at Michael Sean Levering. Everybody have a great day, and we do recover.